following is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com. It is 4:02 in the afternoon on Tuesday. You're tuned to the 4 p.m. 411. I'm Loyd Kirby, the marketing manager here at WLCN. And with me today is the man who controls the purse strings, so to speak, for the city of Lincoln, Mr. Chuck Conzo, the city treasurer. So, Mr. Conzo, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having us.
Sure thing. So you are the city treasurer, which is a part-time position, you told me.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And just sort of, if you can kind of paint with a broad brush here, what exactly does a city treasurer do?
Well, there are a number of things. Probably the most significant is managing the various city bank accounts, and there are about 16 of those.
Okay.
For some of the general fund being the largest, and the sewer O&M sewer operations fund, and the others are dedicated funds that are for specific purposes. The other thing that involves is countersigning the checks along with either the mayor or the city clerk, and then making sure that as on a day-by-day basis those accounts are solvent and that the expenditures doesn't exceed the fund balance and doesn't exceed what's in the budget for those accounts without prior approval from the city council.
Okay. So how long have you been in the office?
I've been there since June of 2010.
2010. So coming up on 13 years, if my math is correct.
That's
Lucky
about
13.
right. Yeah,
So
I'm about 3 months away from that.
Did you do the math and figure out how many mayors you've worked with?
5.
5. Okay.
Yep, 5.
So what kind of changes have there been over the years since you first took office, as far as either day-to-day operations or maybe larger picture issues you've had to deal with, and maybe what they're initially?
There are always unexpected things that come up. A lot of it has to do with the financing of equipment or buildings or other projects that the city has undertaken. I've been through several of those. I would say that's probably the greatest thing. As far as the changes, we had a major change in the software that we use now, and that was I believe in 2017, and that was terrible. But it's implemented now, and it seems to be going smoothly. So
terrible at the time, but
it was. It was even worse for the city clerk's office than it was for me.
So short-term inconvenience for long-term benefit.
Short-term, it was more than inconvenience, but yes,
Okay.
it's working. It's working at least as well, maybe better than the one preceded it. So
okay, and technology, I'm guessing in general, has changed quite substantially since 2010.
That hasn't affected me as much as it does. For example, the sewer billing is under the jurisdiction of the city clerk, and they've gone through a number of very difficult changes with that. And it really hasn't been, other than getting used to the new system, I really haven't had too many problems.
Okay, very good. Our phone number here, 217-648-5510, if you have questions for City Treasurer Conzo, or you can send us an email, 4pm411 at WLCNonline.com. Be sure to tune in next week when Lincoln Mayor Tracy Welch will be with us. And tomorrow on Viewpoint with Bill Gossett, Breanne Titus will be joining us from Capsule. And, of course, they have the big Cheeseburger in Paradise fundraiser coming up, as well as I'm sure Breanne will talk about a lot of the services that they offer to residents in Lincoln and in the area. But once again, today our guest is Chuck Conzo, the treasurer for the city of Lincoln. what is I know it's a part-time position, but in terms of your treasurer duties, what is sort of a typical day for you in dealing with things or
that
issues?
varies kind of on the time of the year or where we are in the month. One of the things that we have to do every year or every month that I do is to balance the bank accounts that the city has. And I said there's about 16 of them. So I kind of make that a priority to make sure those are, there aren't any errors, things posted to the accounts that shouldn't be, things of that sort. And that's a, fairly time-consuming thing. One of the other things that I work on a annual basis has been the budget and the budget resolution and the appropriation ordinance, and do that. There's a lot of people involved in that. The city clerk's a big part of that. Various department heads, police chief, fire chief, street superintendent, building and zoning superintendent, and of course the mayor and the council are involved in that. So that's about a 3-month process, and begins about now and goes till the end of our fiscal year, which is April 30th.
April 30th, okay.
And then there's a number of other things. City treasurers typically are involved with the pension funds, the police pension fund, and the fire pension fund, and we meet those boards. I'm on those boards. We meet 4 times a year minimum, once each quarter. Sometimes there's special meetings, and it involves funding for those and asking the city council to fund those as part of the budget and appropriation process.
Okay. I would think putting a budget together has to be a pretty onerous process, because you have so many departments and so many projects and needs and wants and things like that. Is there sort of a process you have for putting that budget together and kind of keeping things on task?
Yes, the city treasurer is responsible for doing revenue projections for the upcoming year. That's part of that budget. Some places that's kind of where it ends, and then there's a budget officer or somebody else that takes it from there. Right. But the in the budget and the appropriation, those revenue projections are really key to how much you can spend in the year ahead, that and the fund balance that you're starting the year with. And you never want to overestimate that, so I always try to use worst case scenarios.
Sure.
And usually I'm not disappointed in doing that, but it's so that we don't overspend.
Right.
And that you have to take statewide trends, which you can get from the Illinois Municipal League and other sources that you can use to find out what those are, and then also your local trends. And so you have to look at the local history over the past year, past 2 years, even past 3 years, to see what the trends are with that and making those projections. And then from then, once we get the revenue projections, then we start to go through it department by department. I have a committee. There's two aldermen that work with me on that, and we sit down and we have a interview meeting with the fire chief, the police chief, the other department heads, and see what their needs are for the upcoming year. And we put that whole document together and then present it to the city council, and they ask questions and amend it as they see appropriate. Okay.
And you were talking about not, trying to be as on target as you can with your budget protections. We were talking about off air of, the current situation with fuel prices and how that can, that's just one instance of something that can really sort of put a big dent in your budget if you don't plan for it accordingly.
That's right. And we projected those to be a little more costly than they turned out to be for the current year. But looking ahead for the next year, it looks like they're going to go back up. So we want to be very careful with that. And that certainly is something where we'd want to use a worst-case scenario.
Sure, absolutely.
Because the overall, there's been ups and downs in the fuel prices, but on the whole, the trend has been upward since about January of 2021. And I don't see that improving, at least for the next 2 years.
Right. So, all right. We've made it to 10 after, so we will go ahead and take our first break. Once again, our guest is Chuck Conzo, the city treasurer for Lincoln, the city of Lincoln. If you have questions, 217-648-5510, the number to call, or you can email us at 4pm411@wlcnonline.com. And we are back with City of Lincoln Treasurer Chuck Conzo. Once again, if you have questions or comments, 217-648-5510, the number to call. We are here at WLCN, the 4 p.m. 411. I'm Loyd Kirby, the marketing manager. And we were talking about technology and some of the changes that have taken place around the office or in your duties. Another area that you're involved with per se, or at least to some degree, has to do with sewer payments for the city of Lincoln. And you mentioned to me that there's a new program that's can save residents a few bucks if they're able to take advantage of it.
Yes, there is. Now, I'm not directly involved with that
Right.
as much as the city clerk's office, who does it. They spend a lot of time on that. It's a major responsibility, and they do a very good job of it, in my opinion. But years ago we had a program in place where residents could pay their sewer bills a year in advance and receive a 10% discount. At that point, or at that time, the sewer rate was a flat rate, so the discount was the same across the board. Now we've gone to a tiered system where your sewer bill is determined by your water reads or your water usage, and the reason for that is we had to increase the revenue to keep up with the IEPA standards and the federal EPA standards that required mandated certain improvements and upgrades to the sewer plant and to the sewer collection system. So we had no choice but to do that. To do that, we had to implement a tiered system of sewer rates. But at that point, when we did that, we discontinued the 10% discount. Now it's coming back at least for this year. The council will evaluate it on a year-by-year basis, and based upon the revenue needs for the operation of the sewer system and the sewer plant. So for a limited time only, residents will be able to get a 10% discount on their sewer bill by paying it a year ahead. There's a window for this, and the window is February 1st, which is tomorrow, through would be the 20th. The 20th is a federal and state city holiday, county holiday. The President's Day is on the 20th. So for this year, it will extend through the 21st.
Okay.
Residents can pay a year and ahead and receive a discount. But, and I can't stress this enough, before you write that check, talk to somebody in the city clerk's office, either by phone or in person, and find out what your sewer reads were for the year and what your sewer bill will be, because that is implemented beginning with the February payments. So you may have been in a higher or lower tier last year, and that may have changed due to any number of things. They can look that up for you and tell you what your sewer bill would be for the year, and then subtract 10%. And but you must pay it by the 21st, beginning tomorrow and ending on the 21st. It's also important to note, too, that if you're in the habit of paying by credit card, you may want to make an exception to that. Because some people have it automatically taken out, the rate changes or what they owe changes. They don't change it on the recurring credit card payments. So this is a bad month to pay it by credit card. So you definitely want to talk to someone in the city clerk's office before making that payment. But it's a great opportunity to save some money.
Sure, absolutely, and every little bit helps. So I'm sure they appreciate that. Unfortunately, as we talked about, I'm in the part of Lincoln where it doesn't apply to us, so I can't take advantage of that. But you brought up working with the city clerk's office, so I'm sure your office as city treasurer, you work with a lot of the city offices as well as I would think the county treasurer as well.
Yes.
So I know we've talked on this show. We've talked to the tourism director and how the city and the county work together. We've talked to Andrea Runge from the Loyd organization, and we're going to have Beth Kavelman on in the future as far as the county, trying to bring businesses to the county. So how does your office sort of interact and work with the county treasurer office?
Well, we work with the county treasurer and with the county clerk, both. And a lot of it has to do with the process for the tax levy. The city council will set the levy. I give them recommendations. They either follow them or don't follow them or follow them in part. But they vote on the tax levy, and then we forward that to the city clerk and the city treasurer, and then the city treasurer collects that, and that money is transmitted to us, I think in a very timely basis as it's paid throughout the spring and summer of the year. So we work with them a considerable amount on that.
Okay, and I mentioned to you before if we're talking about a city and we're talking about money, inevitably, at least I think taxes is certainly one of the major topics that comes up. You were giving me some information about tax rates and how our current tax rate compares to years past that actually it kind of surprised me when you said it.
Yeah, now this would be for the tax year 2021, which taxpayers paid in 2022.
Right.
People don't realize, even though their property taxes overall may have gone up, the city's share of that has gone down. Going back to, let's say, 1999, the city's portion of the city's tax rate was 1.262%. It's now 1.14%.
Oh wow!
And the city's portion of their total tax was 14.6% then, and now, well over 20 years later, it's 11.72%. So the city council has kept that, and the city in general has kept that tax rate very low. There have been some increases along the way, and quite frankly, there need to be some increases in the amount we put into the police pensions and the fire pensions. But the overall rate compared to the total tax rate has gone down, and during that period of time.
Okay, which anytime we get lower taxes, I think people are generally happier about that.
Yeah, and what people don't realize too is and it's important to look at that tax bill because it's all spelled out in there, but it's spelled out very well. But the city's portion and the county's portion and the townships, very low tax rates for all three of those governmental entities. Library too, for that matter. Some of the other taxing districts are quite a bit higher.
Okay. Our guest once again is Chuck Conzo, the city treasurer for the city of Lincoln. If you have questions or comments, we've got about 10 more minutes left. 217-648-5510, the number to call. Once again, we'll invite you to tune in tomorrow to Viewpoint with Bill Gossett when Breanne Titus will be our guest from Capsule. And then next week on the 4 p.m. 411, Lincoln Mayor Tracy Welch will be joining us. But right now we have Chuck Conzo until 4:30. We'll be back on the other side of the break to talk more with Mr. Conzo about the role of the City of Lincoln treasurer.
If you're an ally of this community, speak out. There are more of us together than apart, and so they need you to stand with them.
We are back on the 4 p.m. 411. I'm Loyd Kirby, Marketing Manager at WLCN, and our guest today is City of Lincoln Treasurer Chuck Conzo. We've covered a wide variety of topics so far. One of the other sort of areas that you have a significant hand in has to do with the city wants to looks into loans and borrowing money and bonds and things like that. What is your role in that when it comes to the city treasury?
Well, when the city council votes to spend money on something like to purchase a major purchase, fire engine, good example, or a few years ago we purchased the old Jefferson School, and which saved us a lot of money by being able to buy an existing sound structure, but it had to be changed significantly to turn it from a school into a police station.
Sure.
So that was a major expenditure. The sewer upgrade that we just went through, and previous sewer upgrades, are costly. So when you're talking about that kind of money, we have to either borrow it through a conventional loan, a bank loan of some sort, or issuing bonds, municipal bonds. So once the city council approves going forward with those kinds of projects, then what the treasurer does will contact various resources to determine where we can get the best interest rates and the best terms for those loans or for those bond issues. And that's a very significant thing, because you're talking about a lot of money when you're talking about those kinds of expenditures.
Sure,
we're fortunate we did a lot of these things a few years ago when the interest rates were still low. Police station being a good example of it. The aerial ladder truck, the other fire engine that we bought prior to that. We bought these all at a time when the interest rates were lower, so we were able to take advantage of that. Looking ahead, going forward, they're not very favorable now, so we're going to have more difficult time with that if we have to borrow a lot of money.
Sure. Yeah, that's understandable. So, you said you've been in office for a number of years and worked with a lot of different mayors. What made you decide to get into, look into running, since it is an elected position, running for city treasurer?
Well, prior to this, I worked for the state of Illinois. I spent 27 years with the Illinois Department of Lottery and Department of Revenue when the lottery was part of that department, and I enjoyed doing that. I retired from that in 2011, and as I was looking ahead at that, this position became available due to the resignation of the previous treasurer, who was here for, I think, 15 years. Mr. Les Plotner was city treasurer for about 15 years. And when he left, I did express my interest in this position, was appointed to fill out the remainder of his term, and I thought it would be something to do at a part-time basis that I would enjoy doing. I really wasn't ready to completely retire. But and as you can tell, I haven't yet. So that's kind of how I got involved in it. And so I've spent a lot of years in government before that, but it was not in city government.
Okay. And so as an elected position, you have to go through the election process and campaigning. How do you, are there certain issues that you emphasize when you're campaigning to be a city treasurer, or how does that work?
Really haven't had to do too much of that because I haven't had any opposition thus far. But yeah, I think if that were the case, I think that it would be appropriate to emphasize experience and competency in dealing with these types of matters.
Sure. And we were also talking off air, in addition to your part-time position, which seems to be a very full-time part-time position, you also serve on a number of different committees and different organizations in the area. You're also involved, you mentioned, in the state association of...
No, I'm a member of yes, I'm a member of the state Illinois Municipal Treasurers Association, and they provide a lot of things in terms of continuing education and resources, which I think are valuable.
Is there, I asked you this, and I don't know if you ever came up with an answer, is there some sort of myth or some misconception maybe that the public has as far as what the city treasurer does or what you're responsible for, that, do they blame you because we got higher taxes, or is there anything like that?
Well, I don't think it's specifically directed at me or at whoever holds this position, But I think there's one myth that people have. They get that property tax bill. They're never happy with it. I can understand why not. But they look at that, and they live in the city, and they think that it's the city that's the primary reason why their taxes are high. And that is not the case. And if they look at that, as I said earlier, that bill is very detailed,
Right.
very clear. And if they look at it and dissect it a little bit, they'll see that the city's portion, also true of the county, as I said, and the townships, or portions of that bill are very, very small. And the misconception is that it's because they live in this city,
Right.
and it's true in other cities. People feel the same way. Whatever city they live in, or county they live in, is the reason for that, and that is not the case. And I would say that's probably the greatest misconception. I don't know that there are a lot of misconceptions about this job, because truthfully, a lot of people don't pay much attention to it. But there may be.
Okay.
You get further down the ballot you go, the less people are, interested in it. It's just the way it is.
So are there any issues that cause you to lose sleep, or maybe that are on the horizon that you're going to be dealing with, that you're not quite sure how you're going to wrestle with them?
Well, the biggest thing, I think, and it's not just here, it's everywhere right now, is inflation. And you look at our fund balance, and our fund balance is significantly better than it was a couple of years ago. But the cost of everything, and we talked about gasoline, but it's not just gasoline. Cost of everything is going up, and it's going to continue as near as I can tell for the next couple of years at least. And when you factor that in, that fund balance doesn't look as great as you'd like it to be. And so the idea, the challenge to that is to be very, very careful in how you spend money, and I do think about that a lot. Mm-hmm. That's why I said I'm glad that not everything, we certainly haven't done everything we'd like to do or need to do, but I'm glad that a lot of things we did a few years back that were significant expenditures, but we were able to do it with a very low interest rate.
Very good. So our guest has been Chuck Conzo, the City of Lincoln Treasurer. Thank you for joining us
Thank you.
today. And as I mentioned, Breanne Titus will be with us tomorrow morning on the Viewpoint program with Bill Gossett, so be sure to tune in at 8:15 for that. And then next week here on the 4 p.m. 411, we will have City of Lincoln Mayor Tracy Welch. So tune in for that at 4 o'clock. Once again, this has been Loyd Kirby with Chuck Conzo for the City of Lincoln Treasurer Office, and thanks for listening. The preceding program is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.